first Attwater's Prairie Chicken talk. Y'all will see that this will also probably be the fastest one you've ever seen. So I'm going to kind of go through. Jennifer and I are kind of talking about the same thing, which is the Attwater's Prairie Chicken, South Texas's local species of endangered grouse. I work with them at the Houston Zoo, and Jennifer works with them out in the wild on the Refuge. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we have to do at the zoo and other captive breeding facilities to get them out onto the Refuge. Just kind of a quick year in what we do at the zoo. In September, we have a captive population of Attwater's Prairie Chickens, usually around 100 to 120 birds. There are 3 other Texas institutions that work with them. In September, we create new pairs. We've transferred the birds back and forth to create better genetics. In October through December, if you haven't seen an Attwater's Prairie Chicken booming, I foolishly did not include a video of that in this talk. I should have. Yeah, but they start their very elaborate display in February and March. We separate the birds for breeding in February. Eggs are laid end of March through June. And this is kind of the June through September is the part that I'm going to really tell you about. Because we hatch chicks, we plan for release in June, and then we release birds back out to the wild from the captive facilities from June to September. One of the questions I get all of the time is, why do we artificially incubate and hand rear all of these birds? Wouldn't parent reared birds be better? And right now, there's a lot of reasons why we don't do that. And mostly it's because of flock management. The more birds that you have, the more chicks you have, the more birds you have to release. So there are reasons that we do that, and most of it is safety of chicks and eggs. In a captive situation, when we are parent rearing those chicks, especially for the Houston Zoo, the Houston Zoo's breeding facility for Attwater's Prairie Chickens is 30 miles away from the zoo, down on the grounds of Johnson Space Center. So we don't have oversight 24/7 of those animals. So if they hatch under parents, there's a lot less control, a lot of things that can happen. And we're a suspicious bunch, so we worry about, the worst case scenario. But we also pull in those eggs and hand rear because we increase the likelihood of double clutching those hens, which means the hens will lay twice as many eggs as they normally would, which gives us, once again, more chicks. More chicks, more birds for release. And also, one of the questions we get is, well, what about imprinting? So if you don't work with captive birds, imprinting basically means you hand raise a bird. It thinks it's a person. We, knock on wood, we have not had that issue. If you see other programs, you'll see like the Condor program where they use puppets to raise birds, or the cranes where people dress in crane outfits. I'm very thankful that me and my staff do not have to dress as prairie chickens in this crane. There's something very innate in these chicks where once they hit about 4 or 5 weeks old, yes, they do know food comes from us, but they do not seek our companionship, they flee us when we come here. So as I mentioned, we artificially incubate everything. We do this through 2 different methods. One is through just a typical incubator. The other one is we use domestic chickens a lot. Domestic chickens are fabulous incubators, so we just put the prairie chicken eggs under them. They don't care that they're prairie chickens, they're just happy they have eggs. So we also monitor the eggs very closely. Once again, I'm going to go back to that statement. More chicks we have, more birds for release. So we monitor these very closely and change the parameters so that we can get the best health of the egg when they hatch. We hand raise all the chicks, and they go through several different stages for various reasons. Early on, the chicks can't really maintain their temperature very well, so we have them inside in a very controlled environment. As they grow to bigger stages where they're able to maintain their body heat better, where they're able to roam around a little bit better, where they know where to find food. You don't have to worry about them, ignoring the food for the sake of running around. And then the final 2 stages prior to release, we actually get them out onto grass, expose them to elements. They do have some issues where the chicks will sometimes, they're basically little cattle, so they will completely mow down any grass in a pen. So we do have to monitor that very closely because they can sometimes basically overeat. So there's some captive breeding hurdles that we've come across. The lack of males displaying, the lack of nesting or egg laying, fertility, hatchability, and then chick survival. So I'm going to go through these like rapid quick. Males displaying, if you know anything about grouse, they're a link displaying species. So if you think of any junior high football game where all of the guys are in one place showing off, hoping that the girls notice them, that is what prairie chickens are doing. So early in the captive breeding program, because we're tracking genetics, we don't put the males all together. So there was not the competition that they needed to display. We learned over many years that we actually have to give them visual access. They'll fight between the mesh, they'll bloody up their faces a little bit, but otherwise they're just fine. And the good thing about that is that helped with nesting and egg laying, because if the guy's not showing off, the hen does not want to mate with him. So we had to make sure, as in my family growing up, if mama ain't happy, no one's happy. So we have to make sure that hen is comfortable. We have to make sure she is happy where she is, has the nesting locations that she wants. So we did actually start allowing the males to display in visual access to each other. They'd fight through the mesh, and all of the hens started laying more. That also happened to increase our fertility because they all of a sudden started liking these males that they were paired with, and that led to little action that created fertile eggs. And with the hatchability, we went through a lot of, over the years with the program, we've gone through a lot of learning processes where we have increased nutrition that created better eggs to begin with. We also did a whole lot with incubation parameters so that we could better manage those incubators, whether they be artificial incubators or chickens, so that we increase the overall health of the egg and create better hatchability. Sorry, I already covered that. But basically, all of that stuff has led to us being able to release chicks on the reserve. And I'll just give an example of some of we're talking about resiliency. This year we had in the captive population over 800 chicks hatch. We're going to be releasing, at least our release list contains over 500 birds. Now, there's always, everything that lives dies, so there's always some mortality that we have to contend with. But I will let Jennifer now talk about what happens on the reserve.
Her work kind of ends when the chickens come to the refuge. And so there's a male displaying out on the actual refuge. And so out in the wild, their limiting factors have really been lack of habitat. And so they started declining back in the 1900s because they used to have all the habitat through Louisiana as well, about 6 million acres, and now they estimate there's about 65,000 acres of prime habitat for them in Texas alone. And so there used to be about 1 million prairie chickens, and now there are two separate populations between the refuge and then one other release site we have. But of course, naturally, predators limit them, they're kind of bottom of the food chain. And then in the wild now, since we've been releasing them, chick survival has been an issue for us in the wild because of red and ported fire ants, if you guys are familiar with that. So you can kind of see the population on the refuge, starting from when the refuge was established in the 70s. And you see them kind of get to the low point about in 1995 or so, and when it started uptaking because of the captive breeding program. So what Hannah and other zoos do is crucially important to the species. And then you see a little downtake at the end, and that's because of rainfall pretty much and some other factors. But we've had 3 500-year floods on the refuge in the last 3 years. So yeah, like I said, the captive breeding program is really why that number, at least they're still in the wild because of it. Okay. And then of course, so the release season, like Hannah mentioned, we got a nice trailer where we'll actually bring them out. But we put them in these acclimation pens, you can see, for 14 days to get them used to actually being in the prairie and not at the zoo anymore. And so they'll stay in there, and then we'll do a soft release, so you kind of just have to push them out. They won't be majestic like eagles and fly out, you know, they want to just slowly wander out. And we'll feed them inside and outside of the pen for a little bit, but you really want to try them to get them away from the pens, because sometimes predators can see like, oh, pretty much like a drive-through for them, so you want to avoid that. There you go. Okay, so of course, impacts of weather. The picture to the left is our entrance road, and so that was actually in 2016. That wasn't even Harvey. We weren't allowed to get out for Harvey for 9 days, federally ordered. And then of course you can see when it happens in the springtime, it floods nests. They are ground nesters, so weather is a big impact on these birds. And so you can see some of the weather data from the refuge over the years. You can see the real high peaks are from hurricanes, and of course Harvey is way up there. And then overall we've had a lot of heavy spring rainfall too. And so some of the effects of Harvey, from what we kind of can know, all of the birds have, all the females have radios on them, as well as usually about a quarter of the males when they're released. So at the time of Harvey, we had 29 birds that were radio collared, and after Harvey, like I said, there were 9 days between when we were able to get back onto the refuge, but we only found 5 alive after that, and those were hens. And so you can see a large percentage of them were weather related, and then as far as some predators too, but that was also slightly weather related. And we also had 18 that were in the pens that we had to rush back to the Houston Zoo, released in October, and they had a higher predation rate because a lot of the hawks had already moved back in at that point. And so moving towards recovery though, like Hannah mentioned, you can see the captive birds we've released over the years, and so it's going to be the highest this year, knock on wood. It's really had a really big boom in chicks, so we're very excited about that. The rainfall's been mostly average, so knock on wood for that too. And we also have received funding for treatment of red and ported fire ants, which is a big management tool we use out there, because like I said, that impacts the chicks. And also we've had fewer predation rates so far, so it's looking up, and I think we'll get there. But of course, hopefully we get some good years and we can build the population back up, which we have from years past. And so we have all the good tools to do it. We have a captive breeding program, and that's definitely what's most important. So yeah, very good.
Thank you to all of our speakers. We're going to do a door prize drawing, and then we're going to